one of the issues we have in San Diego is housing. And when we were in Seattle, we were recommended to talk to you over here because you guys are doing such a wonderful job. Just came here to find out a little bit about you and how this all got started and what you're doing.
What we've aspired to do with Open Doors is help be a tool for the nonprofits who support homeless consumers to help connect them much more easily to affordable housing.
Tell me about the story of how you started, the bicycle story. I love that.
So I am a cyclist, that's my hobby. One day on an airport ride in 2011, I had just been recently to a nonprofit event about homelessness, and my eyes were much more open to what I saw on the streets in downtown, on the west side of downtown specifically. And what I saw looked like a Coldplay concert on a Sunday morning, with people standing in lines 4 deep around the block at the various churches that provide meals to homeless individuals. And I realized at 2011 we were, year 3 of the financial crisis, but the world was getting a lot better for most people, and it was clearly not getting better because this problem was getting worse. I reached out to other friends of mine in my business, which is commercial real estate, particularly focused on apartments, and I said, guys and ladies, we know something about housing. This is how we've made our living, and certainly we have something to offer if we put our heads together to help Atlanta get to a better place. Atlanta and housing specifically has been very good to all of our families. How can we make that work well for all of these families? And that's really the story about how our group, which is called the Atlanta Real Estate Collaborative, started. And where we ended up was a program called Open Doors, where we connected to the best-in-class nonprofits who serve homeless consumers and connect them to the affordable housing landlords and management companies that should be focused on meeting the needs of the most vulnerable people in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's good. That gives them, that's them focused on the work they need to do, and then you're the tool they use to help them. Yeah, that's what we need to do in San
Because
Diego.
the work, the case management work, that's the heavy lifting. So and they have all of these talented, skilled professionals who are focused on meeting the needs of people who have, chronic mental illness or substance abuse, health issues, things that contributed to their homelessness. But they generally are not very good at real estate. So we could help solve that gap a little bit and help them connect better. What we saw was 2 disconnected worlds. And we had people, case managers, like going through Craigslist and calling 8 or 9 landlords and having them all say, no, we're not interested. And so we thought, well, if I'm a prospective customer and I'm looking for a 2-bedroom and a fireplace near Piedmont Park, I can search for that online and I'll get a list of 8 places that I can go check out. So how does the case manager for a homeless individual, the only thing that's different about their search is they may need a 2-bedroom with a fireplace that accepts a VASH voucher for homeless veterans, or a Georgia housing voucher for somebody who has a chronic mental illness, or even a pretty standard Section 8 voucher. If we could solve that gap technologically so that their searches are just as easy as my search looking for the place near Piedmont Park, this should be a problem that we can get solved pretty quickly. If you go back to 2012 when we started placing people, 4,000 people who used to be homeless got placed in these Open Doors properties.
Wow, 4,000. That's the amount of unsheltered right now in San Diego. 4,000. What would you say we would need to do first in San Diego to get something like this going?
Well, it absolutely start for us, and I think for any community to get really successful, and it requires a partnership between the private market where the units exist. See, my guess is that any place else is like Atlanta, there aren't a lot of public housing units. And those few public housing units that there are waiting lists for those. And what happens in those systems is that the most able people in those income groups are able to get their hands on those public housing units. And so they aren't like made available to those who are the most vulnerable or, the least able. And so you have to change your prioritization as a community to make sure that those units have some place for vulnerable populations. But let's talk about the private units, which far, by many, many multiples, have thousands more units than the public units. And how you bring those people to the table, particularly those landlords that had some subsidies in their financing. So somebody who got low-income housing tax credits to build their project or to buy and renovate their project, they are basically self-identified as somebody who should have some amount of their units set aside for vulnerable populations.
In San Diego, there's people that I know that got a voucher but couldn't redeem it with any landlord because they were not familiar with it. Is there some way of training the landlords or teaching them about the system so they would more readily accept vouchers?
Well, so a couple different thoughts on that. Number one is you start with the population that says, I'll talk to you, I'll think about it, right? So we talk to the population of landlords that are required to participate because they took some of this financing in the beginning. The other thing is a lot of people don't know this, but there are a lot of people who are homeless and placed without vouchers. It's called rapid rehousing, right? So we're bringing somebody to the table and we're going to cover their rent for a period of time while they get back on their feet. So a lot of people who aren't in the voucher business, and they have their reasons to not be in the voucher business, we don't spend a lot of time trying to convince them to get in the voucher business. We focus first on finding the people who are in the voucher business and also doing the placements that don't involve vouchers as well. I think that at some point in time, we're going to have to crack that code to get other landlords who are anti-voucher. There's a lot of people in the conventional housing business who aren't in the voucher business for this reason. The reason is that I've got a unit that rents for $2,000 and you've got an $800 voucher. So it's not that I'm not willing to accept your voucher, I just don't have an $800 unit.
I see.
So we start with finding out what's the best system of finding all the $800 units out there, and find out those landlords that participate in some programs and say, we've got some other housing programs we'd like you to consider. And we use our relationships and the credibility of people who know some of our partners and board members, and they know that we've had some good successes in these programs. It's okay for us too. And getting these people to communicate and talk, SMP, they're all doing a great job with this. And also the other way to overcome them is when I say that I'm bringing to you a resident who's got case management, that this resident is probably going to perform better than the person that you just take, responding to one of your ads that doesn't have case management. There's no safety net there. There's no one to call if there's an issue. And so that has really resonated, and we've had really, really good success on placements. So first of all, you gotta find a pool of willing landlords and a couple of champions that say, this is really important to our community. We can't have a community. We can't call ourselves a first-class city. Certainly can't do it in Atlanta if 8,000 people are not sheltered. When you find the people in the real estate community, particularly in the apartment community, say this should be, almost in every city, those people support the food banks. They support all sorts of charities that assist people who are in need. But these are the people who know most about housing and actually have something to give besides just writing a check. You can say, let's get together and let's find 6, 8, 10 willing landlords to start putting together a networking facility that connects these nonprofits, because you'll find in San Diego, just like Atlanta, you have 100 different nonprofits that are serving different segments of the homeless population.
Yes, true.
And so most of them don't have any scale, and they don't have a whole lot of capital. So they can't be focused on real estate or connecting to real estate. So if we can say, we're going to outsource that finding of apartments or houses for you, because we're doing this with single family homes now too. Taking a group of landlords, getting them to meet and talk to the continuum of care in your city and say, we're here and we can put something together that allows your nonprofits to connect to the available affordable housing.
That'd be wonderful.
And see, the issue is that when most cities do a census, they find that the housing is actually there. It's just inefficient to find.
Yes.
And if we can make that efficiency a little bit better, using the same kinds of tools we use in our everyday business, you know, apartment guide type websites. We've been collaborating with an organization called RentPath, a major apartment marketing company. They have websites like apartmentguide.com. And they offered to take 6 million lines of code that they developed for their regular business and say, we're going to help make a website that you can have a case manager draw a polygon and say, all of the units that match my consumer's needs that are available and will accept this voucher or that voucher, they pop up on a screen. It's like, and so instead of having your case managers having to call 9 people, send you around town to get turned down 5 times when you don't need any more help feeling bad, that instead we say, we got 5 guys that say they'll take you. Guys ask the question, you know, what's the time commitment? So some people are going to have to put in time, but it wouldn't be any different than the time that they put in if they're working on the community's park conservancy or the community's food bank or community, whatever it is. You know, these, even in their private businesses, you know, if you're going to make something successful, it's going to take some time. But the exciting thing is that a lot of successful people in life are passionate and they've created an opportunity where they want to give back. So the time is, they're going to give it to something. And if you can help the people who are most vulnerable in your city, it is incredible the multiplier effects when those people get back on their feet and they contribute. And what happens in terms of the reduction in cost in emergency medical services, in the criminal justice system. Studies have been done, it's like a 12 to 20 times multiple for every dollar spent on ending somebody's homelessness. Now you talk about if you've got an area in the city, as we do on the west side of downtown Atlanta, that is encumbered by street homelessness. You know, you've got situations where investors won't come and invest in those areas. So if you help these people lift their lives up, all of a sudden huge areas of town that were previously redlined to new investment, all of a sudden those become the new artists and, you know, the new fun restaurants areas. Life, vitality, vibrancy, schools get better, children get more opportunities and exposure. And obviously, it's such a win for everybody. So I don't think finding people who are interested in that kind of philanthropic enterprise and having the time to devote, because everybody likes a winner. And you don't make your city win until you solve homelessness. People ask sometimes, you know, what kind of money does it take? In terms of how we sustain the employees that do the matchmaking and do run the websites and do service the nonprofits, and make sure to make those connections, those relationships, those marriages between the properties, the landlords. And that stuff is funded privately. And so we've kicked in money ourselves. We've written checks to say, listen, we're not going to ask other people to donate to something that we're not funding ourselves. So that's what we really wanted to do, is create philanthropies that we knew were sustainable and successful, that provided great leverage. And that's been a very easy sell to people in our industry. The apartment community has really risen up and written, you know, very, very impressive checks to solve this. And some of the philanthropic foundations have said, wow, this is really innovative, this is really cost effective. And that's what they're about. They're wanting to find solutions that work.